Hello and welcome back, beloved podcast viewers and listeners. In today's episode of Your Best Life, my husband Pete and I are going to share the T in Quests, the acronym we use in our True North Quests coaching. The T stands for True Heart Passions and Core Values, and we're going to share how your passions and values might be both the clues and the fuel to your calling. Thanks for being with us today. Here we go. Welcome to Your Best Life podcast, where we help you discover your calling so you can live with purpose and clarity. We're Pete and Julie Morrill, your guides, mentors, and lifelong adventurers, and we're here to help you find your true north. So Pete is here with me again, and he's going to be answering a lot of questions about the T in our Quests acronym. So QUESTS, we're on T today, which is True Heart Passions and Core Values. So Pete, are you ready to answer questions?
We'll give it a shot.
Always so. The T in our Quest acronym stands for True Heart Passions and Core Values. Can you define for our listeners what True Heart Passions and Core Values are?
Yeah, let me take passions first. So a passion is something that you have at an irregular level. In other words, you feel so strongly about something that you're in the top 10%. For example, I have a passion for the outdoors. Everything that I have done in life has included me being somewhat immersed in the outdoors, outdoor adventure of some kind. And so that's a true heart passion. And I want you to realize that there's going to be a number of passions. You're not going to just have one passion. You're going to have a number of passions. And so some people want to say their passion is their calling. I think it's great if your passion is part of your calling, but for the most part, your passion is something that you have been given that is printed almost on your soul. It's really a deep thing. Some passions are social justice type of passions. Maybe somebody has a passion for the homeless people, or somebody has a passion for those people that are immigrants in a community or something like that. Some passions are just imprinted when you're a child. Like my passion for the outdoors. I love being in outdoor adventures, especially. And so I think the biggest thing about your passion is it really drives your heart. Probably was there when you were a child. And so it's good to think about those times when you were young. What is it that you love to do? I have a passion for animals, and that showed up very quickly in my life, and has taken me all the way through. Now we breed the most Labrador retrievers on the West Coast because of that passion. So um, I think you should ask a different question about core values, because core values is quite a bit different.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what's an example of one of your heart passions? Well, you just shared the outdoors and animals.
Mm-hmm.
So what's one of your core passions?
Core values.
Sorry, I meant core values.
Yeah,
what's one of your core values?
Yeah, a core passion would be kind of blurring the lines. But a core value is I really harmonize in authentic relationships. I don't like to go into a party and just have a lot of small talk. But if I can have one or two deep conversations, I become passionate about that time, because my core value is authentic relationships. And so the organizations that I've led, there was a lot of deeper, deeper conversations, because that's what I valued. I value integrity. I value saying what I'm going to do and then doing it. And I value people that say what they're going to do and do it. Now, core values and passions are different. Core value is something that you find that's necessary about the environment to allow you to function at your best. A passion is something that pulls you into a situation or a cause that really, really makes a difference. So, and you'll when you go through the exercises on core values, you go through the exercises on passions, it will make more sense. Passions are things that pull you towards a cause. Um, Core values are things that you value when you're working in an environment or an organization or a group or a family or a team.
Can a true heart passion be confused with a calling?
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not only confused with a calling, but it's integrated into a calling. That's really great. But can it be confused with it? Um, that's a little bit of a confusing question because a calling is how I'm focusing maybe a multiple passions towards. But not every passion is going to show up in your calling, right? My love for animals probably is not real integral to my life calling. Um, in fact, my love for animals is what we're hoping will fuel my life calling financially, but not um, but not be the focus of my life calling. So, to answer the question, yes, your heart passion can be part of your calling. Your heart passion should incorporate, or your life calling should incorporate several of your passions.
Well, I can think of a way that one of my true heart passions could be confused with my calling, and I did get confused about it. And that was when I was really, let's see, how can I say this? Growing up and throughout all my life, I've been involved in music in some way. So, singing in a choir, or singing on a worship team, or playing the piano, taking piano lessons. I wondered many times if that was my calling, if maybe I had the gift of worship, and maybe I should be on a worship team, and maybe you should describe define what
Well,
worship
worship
is.
is a faith-based term, right? And it's a faith-based term that basically, most of the time, it has to do with music. Not always. Most of the time, it has to do with music that's focused towards worshiping the God that we serve. So, and that was your upbringing,
Mhm,
and is still part of your faith now, a big part of your faith. And really, worship has become much more
mhm,
in the forefront of people's faith
mhm.
in modern religion than it maybe was. Well, I mean,
It's always been,
yeah,
yeah.
it was just different before,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, now you have worship teams in churches and worship leaders. And I never was a leader, but I was often asked to be on a worship team. And sometimes I would do it and sometimes I wouldn't. And a couple years ago, I was inspired, I think, by God to gather together a number of high school and some junior high students to coach them in being on a worship team. So it was a youth worship team. And I got inspired because I recognized in a couple of the students that they had an actual gift of worship. I don't know how to describe that exactly, except they were more inspired, I guess, and more in tune with God in some way. And when they sang, you could actually feel the presence of God.
Hmm.
And it's hard to explain that, but it doesn't happen with everybody. It certainly doesn't happen when I sing or play the piano or anything. But I just recognized this in a couple of students. So I gathered them together and led this little worship team, and basically had to teach them from scratch um, how to sing at all in some ways, and then how to sing in harmony, which was quite a challenge, and then teach them how to sing leading in front of a group which was also a challenge because they were nervous about it. But once that got going and they were excited and they kind of went all their separate ways after a while, after that year of teaching them, they were pretty comfortable. Some of them were leading worship in their churches, which was awesome because they were so young. We're talking junior high and high school age kids that were leading worship in their churches, and it was several churches. And so after that, they kind of said, "Okay, we're good. We don't really need to be on your worship team anymore." And I didn't feel really inspired to keep leading them and teaching them and coaching them because I had already done it. They're already doing exactly what I trained them to do. And I was a little bit confused during that time because other people heard me coaching and leading this team, and they asked me to help lead worship at their churches. So I joined a worship team for just a tryout kind of period. I was not inspired at all. I was drained by the experience, which was really odd to me because I thought, okay, I guess I thought I had the gift of worship. I guess I don't. So what was confusing was it was a heart passion I had to actually coach the kids and recognize somebody's gift and bring it out and train them and coach them to be who I think God made them to be. But I didn't actually have the gift of worship. So that even though I have the gift of singing and music and playing the piano, it's not part of my true heart passion necessarily, and definitely not part of my calling. It is a true heart passion, but it's
Not part of
it's
your
not part
calling.
of my calling.
What's interesting about that is worship for you is it checks a lot of boxes. First of all, it showed up in your story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, emotional grid. You love singing, right? It enlivens your personality, right? It's a skill. Even you've been
Mm-hmm.
trained in
Mm-hmm.
piano in certain ways to get that skill
And voice
going.
lessons, yeah.
It is part of your true heart passion. It's one of your true heart passions. So it's weaving its way through your life and through our grid. But you had to come to the conclusion, I don't think it's part of my calling.
It was very strange to me
Yes. And
because
animals are very,
everything fit.
yes,
And I thought, this is it. I have found my calling. And then suddenly I realized, wait a second, this is not.
it's a good example of the fact that we can have counterfeits. They're not bad things. Sometimes there are our funnest hobbies or our we're really passionate about certain things, but it doesn't become a calling because it's not something that we are actively giving away. Now, you actually gave it away there for a short time, but when people asked you to go deeper into that, you said, it's not really where I want to spend my
It
time.
wasn't who I am.
Yeah, yeah. It's a gift that had been given to you, but you're not motivated to give it away all the time. Occasionally, yes, but not all the time. And so it's very close to being a calling. And you're going to find that there are a number of things in your life that are very close to being a calling, but they're not quite a calling because at this station of your life, you're not actively position to give them away. That's a little bit ahead of where we're at today, right? But at the same time, it's interesting thought to think. And passions is one of those things where it can be a counterfeit to calling. I'm passionate about fly fishing, and I have used fly fishing in my calling, but it is not my calling. But certain people are called to do fly fishing, so it's not necessarily. But fly called to do fly fishing wouldn't be enough of a calling. Called to do fly fishing to enliven other people's spirits in the outdoors, in an outdoor setting, that would be more of a calling. Okay.
Yeah, and what I would say is I was in my calling when I was coaching those kids to fulfill their calling. I knew it was their calling to worship and lead worship. So in that setting, with working with just those students, I was in my calling. I was fulfilling my
Because
calling.
your calling is
It
coaching
was the
people
coaching part.
to realize who they
Yes.
are,
And I
right?
did that, and it was just so fulfilling because they knew, oh, I'm actually good at this. I think I'm called to this. I'm going to do this. And they went off, and they are currently, some of them I see them once in a while, and I tell them, you need to get back to leading worship at your church. So they're not right now, but some of them are. And I'm really proud of them for doing that.
Yeah. Interesting that I think in that evaluation you learned a little bit more about your calling too, right? Because why wasn't this most fulfilling, and why didn't I
Yes.
want to go deeper with this worship team? It was because the coaching element was your calling, not the worship element or the music element.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah, I love that I have those gifts, but yeah,
fly fishing, I love
exactly.
it. But when I'm coaching people to learn life skills while they're fly fishing, that becomes part of my calling.
Mhm.
Whitewater rafting is better example for me because I've taught a lot of people whitewater rafting to be a whitewater rafting guide. And over that time, I've learned several good coachable moments. And that's what
Oh, yeah.
enlivens me. Whitewater rafting is a passion,
Mhm.
but it's a tool. That passion is a tool to my life calling, similar with
Mhm.
your music as
Like,
well.
music is a gift and
Yeah,
it's a tool.
yeah.
Yeah. Was there ever a time, Pete, when you were not pursuing one of your heart passions, and how did you feel in that time?
Well, first of all, let me clarify. There's always times when you're not going to be pursuing all of your passions, right? Your passions is like a bouquet of flowers. And sometimes you look at this flower and sometimes you look at that flower. But I don't think that was the essence of your question. I think the
How
essence
did
of
it affect your soul when you were not pursuing any of your
any of my
heart
passions,
passions?
yeah.
Yeah.
So probably the most obvious example, or the most obvious time frame for me, was when I went through my divorce,
Mm.
because I have a passion for leadership, I have a passion for teaching, I have a passion for authentic relationships, I have a passion for the outdoors, and a bunch of other things that don't have anything to do with my divorce. But many of those things I felt um, incapable of emotionally. I felt like I had lost my way emotionally, and I felt like I had become a shell, the confidence. I was a shell of myself in terms of the confidence as a leader, as a coach, as a guide, as a teacher. All of those things are skills or passions that I've had. But when you don't feel personally confident about yourself, you start to lose any confidence in passions or anything. So the nice thing is that was a season, and I think there are almost always seasons when we find ourselves, boy, life just doesn't have much passion right now, because either a relational difficulty for me, but sometimes, and you're going through a season where there's a physical difficulty that's making it harder to pursue your passions.
Well, let me just clarify that I have some cervical disc problems in my neck, so it's causing a lot of pain, and I'm not wearing my neck gear right now, but I usually do. So
During the
I
day.
wear a brace. So
Yeah.
for this podcast, I'm not showing it to you all.
And because that's a limitation, like my divorce was a limitation, there's a season when certain passions probably get very little attention.
Mm.
Um, and yet we would hope that our life calling gets at least nurturing attention. What I mean by that is, at least we're, perhaps right now you don't feel like you can get out and about, but you can do a lot more research. You can
And
do a
I can do
podcast.
this.
You
Yeah.
can do certain things that will allow your passion to leak out in the midst of a limited physical. And in my divorce, in that period of time, almost everything was gutted from me, if I was being honest about it. And so, because of that, life becomes passionless,
Mhm.
right? And you just don't want to spend very much time in a passionless season.
Mhm.
Unfortunately for me, um, maybe there's that time and maybe one other time that I can think of that there was a period of months and maybe even a year or two where I had a life without passion.
Mm.
Unfortunately for other people, those seasons can be longer. Sometimes they're in a bad relationship, sometimes they're in a wayward or go nowhere career or job, and life is passionless. We're hopefully going to free you from the passionless life.
Mm. You're
Is
talking to our audience about this,
Yeah,
yeah.
I want us to see that what we're trying to do is help you identify what your passions are, so then you can get back into that as quickly as you can, even if a season kind of derails you for a short time.
Mm. So, would you say that a a time of having no heart passion could be like a dark night of the soul?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's maybe a dramatic way of putting it.
I kind of sprung that one on you.
Yeah, but having a life without passion is living off of your natural rails. We're all going to find times in our life that we're like that. It's just when you know what your passions are and you know what your life calling is, you should be able to climb back onto a rail a little bit more quickly than somebody that doesn't know that. And sometimes you just need to look for a thread. Like right now, physically, you're less able to do things. So your thread is, can I do research in terms of
Mhm.
putting our True North Quest program together? Can I get the podcast going? Are there certain things that I can do? And in some ways, we should be able to do our life calling from a wheelchair.
Mhm.
But we just have to get more creative
Yeah.
sometimes and not do it the same way we've always done it. So,
Yeah. I can think of times too when a person may not be living out your heart passion because of depression and other hard circumstances. I wasn't going to bring this up today, so I'll just mention it briefly that I was in a 6-year abusive marriage. So I can't think of many passions that I had
you
or
had a
lived
passion
out.
towards your daughter.
I did. I had one daughter during that time, and I she became kind of my calling and my passion because I devoted all my time to her, and it was good. It actually helped. She helped me survive and live. But I was so depressed for all that time, 6 years of being depressed, and then even afterwards still getting out of that depression and having PTSD. It's a long story. So it was really hard to live out my true heart passions and definitely didn't know my calling during that time. So I just felt kind of faltering and lost during that time.
Yeah. And almost everybody has seasons when really they're not in their strike zone. They're not in the right place. They're not in an affirming
Mhm.
situation. And so don't feel like you can't have a life calling or you can't look for those things at that time. In fact, sometimes if you're in those situations, that's when understanding your life calling is most important because it gives you confidence. We just talked with a couple last year that they were basically lacking confidence because they had been put in career positions that didn't fit who they were. And largely what we gave them the opportunity to do is just say, hey, why don't you explain to the people that are supervising you that you're not good at what you're being asked to do? And what we're going to do is we're going to give you what you are good at. And then that gives you a good reason to say no to the things you're not good at. So that's a job that, and many people, they say 70% of Americans are not in jobs that they enjoy or they get motivated by. So that's good situation to
70%.
start reconfiguring your life. Sometimes you can be in the same job, but just be in a slightly different position or be doing different tasks within that job. And sometimes helping your supervisor know, I'm really good at this. I'm really passionate about this. This part makes my brain go numb. And so help me be more effective for the organization by giving me more things that are maybe more relational or maybe more task focused or whatever that person is passionate about, skilled at, all those things. So.
Pete, how can you recognize the difference between a true heart passion and just a passing interest?
Yeah, well, I think probably the longevity is probably one of the biggest things, but a true heart passion just continually shows up, doesn't go away, um, and so my love for the outdoor has never gone away. But at one time, I was very involved in government. I was a political science major. I was in student government. But to be honest with you, I went through an election season.
You worked for a
Yeah, I
politician.
worked for a guy who was running,
Mhm.
hoping to be a politician. I also worked for a politician at one time in college as an internship. And one of the things I realized was, man, we fought really hard for this. And 2 years, everything kind of broke our way. And then 2 years later, the electorate, voted in people that were of an opposing view, and I lost motivation because I was kind of going, why did I put all that effort into these ideals when in 2 years the wind can shift in the public opinion or public desire, and I lost my passion for making a difference through government, through political, I wanted to work for a political candidate. I didn't want to be a politician, but I lost my interest in that, and that told me, okay, that's not a calling. It was a passion, and it goes back. Right now, I'm identifying that passion as I'm a culture changer,
Mm.
but I would say in a much smaller but much more significant way. In other words, when I was at my camp, I defined a culture that really shaped kids' lives for 3 or 4 months while they were there, and some of them were there for 2 or 3 years during that time. And I know we changed lives. And I realized I like changing culture that changes lives rather than issues.
Mm. I can relate to this because I worked at the state capitol in
Hmm.
California for a
Yeah,
while. I was really gung ho, really excited to change the world,
yeah.
and found out nothing I'm doing really changes anything.
Yeah.
So it
Well,
was
you
really,
worked in a capital where the majority was not in favor of where your candidate
right.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that made it harder.
It was very deflating to me to figure out I don't know that these people are really changing the culture at all.
Yeah.
So I kind of relate to the culture changing because I wanted to see big things change in California and they didn't. And I suddenly had a revelation that I think grassroots is really where it's at.
Mm.
So I already had my teaching credential. I had taken a leave of absence from teaching and I went back into teaching and felt like, kids are where it's at.
Mm.
I think if we can reach a younger generation, I can influence better that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And mine was foundational truth in people's lives was much more important than superficial or circumstantial
yeah.
issues. Circumstantial issues is how much taxes are we going to pay?
Mm.
Foundational truth is God loves you and has a plan for your life. And I realized, for me, it was much more important that I could say, this is true, and now I'm going to point you to that, rather than this might be true based on these
Mhm,
circumstances and
mhm,
this activity and whatever your economic level is and all that sort of stuff. Politics is complicated.
mhm.
Religion is complicated too. But what I like is I like truth that isn't complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like pointing people to that truth and then helping them live out that truth in their life.
Well, what's interesting too is you said that one of your core values was going deeper with people and
Hmm.
not being superficial. That is definitely me too, which is why talking on a podcast, I feel like I'm talking to a small group of friends and I can connect with you. I don't have to talk about superficial things like, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, the weather's been nice. I just can't do that very well.
Hmm.
So, what's cool about a podcast like this, I can go as deep as I want
Yeah,
immediately.
right.
And that was the same with teaching. I was able to actually get pretty deep with students and just share kind of deep concepts at times, even about my experience in politics or whatever. Um, and I didn't have to be superficial with them. I mean, yes, I would say, "How are you doing?" But it was never superficial. I would actually care about how they were doing.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
makes a difference for the
Hmm.
students. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, my next question is, can you have multiple heart passions? And can they all point to your calling? If not, how do you know which ones point to your calling?
Yeah, well, definitely you can have lots of flavors of ice cream and you can love them all, right? Um, so, in fact, I think the more interesting people in lives have more interesting people um, have multiple heart passions, right? I love the outdoors. I love fly fishing. I love training dogs. I'm passionate about all of those things, and some people are passionate, and I could list another 15
Mhm.
of things that I'm truly passionate about. Some I was seasonally passionate about. Some I have consistently been passionate about. Um, the best thing for me to do is to, if I'm thinking about my calling, to um, meld those things together. It's kind of like if you think about a bunch of wires and they're all going in different directions, but the ones that are effective are the ones that all come from the same power source and are going to operate something that makes a difference, right? So, being passionate about a lot of things makes your life interesting. Being super passionate about a lot of things might make your life ineffective. In other words, you're going so many different directions so often. So, what you've got to do is you've got to find that balance where your life is interesting. In other words, I can go fly fishing on Wednesday if I want to and play pickleball on Friday. I like both of them. I'm passionate about both of them. Neither one of them are part of my calling, but I can move maybe pickleball into my calling, or I've moved whitewater rafting into my calling because I use whitewater rafting as a way to coach people to life's deeper truths. And so that is really more closely aligned with my calling than anything. So then I might say, oh, could I do that with pickleball, or could I do that with fly fishing? And maybe I'm going to be effective at doing it, maybe I'm not. And so now I said, okay, I think whitewater rafting is the best passion that aligns with my calling.
Mm.
So I think that's one of the jobs that we help people do is we help them kind of sort through, now that we know your calling, how can we do it in a unique way that allows you to see the importance of putting your passions in there, and why is this passion given to you based on your calling? Sometimes it's just a diversion. It's just a different thing to do that you can enjoy doing. But my hope is that your calling would incorporate multiple passions that are in your life.
Can passions evolve over time? Have any of your true heart passions shifted as you've grown or gone through life seasons?
Yeah, so definitely passions can and will evolve over time. And you've got to give them the freedom to do that. And you've got to determine, is this passion a hobby? Is it an infatuation? I love, old time movies or something like that. Is it an entertainment or is it a calling? And so the passions that are part of your calling, you want to continually invest in and improve in. The passions that aren't, you may want to improve in them or you may want to let them go by the wayside. I used to love backpacking. It used to be a passion because I love the outdoors, right? It's no longer a passion because I have an older body that doesn't like strapping on 50 or 60 pounds on my back and walking for 10 miles and then laying on the ground. Now, could I still do it and could I enjoy doing it? Yes, I very much could. And would I be willing to put up with the older body? Yes, I would. But is it part of my calling? No, it's not. So I can give it or take it, right? Or I can do something like it. I can go horsepacking, which gets me in the same environment, allows me to enjoy the same passions, but now allows my rear end to be sore rather than my back to be sore. Okay. Or I can do day trips that are, or I go whitewater rafting, which is pretty much a strenuous activity for 5 hours and then I get to go home and sleep in my bed, right? So I have learned to carve my passions or change them a little bit to fit the person that I am today versus the 18-year-old when I first strapped on a backpack and started going all over the country. So, yeah.
So, what's a step someone listening can take today to re engage with a passion they may have set aside or forgotten? And can you talk directly to our listeners
Yeah,
about
I think the best thing to do is ask yourself. We would love you to kind of list maybe 20 passions, things that you really enjoy doing, things that you really enjoyed doing over a period of time. What are the common themes of those? Which ones do I care about today? Because maybe you were very much into gardening 15 years ago, but now you've moved past that. And that's just not a passion of yours anymore. Okay. Circle the ones that you care about the most. Okay. Could you combine some of them? Like I told you, I love the outdoors. I love whitewater rafting. Obviously, those two combine really well. It also combines in that I like challenging people in physical environments to break down social structures. I value authentic relationships. And I find whitewater rafting allows me to do that. Okay, so now I'm starting to combine some of those. Um, the biggest thing I would say is say which ones are valuable enough for me to reinvest in them. Maybe that would be 3 or 5 in the next year. I'm going to reinvest. And then some of them I've been consistently investing in. So maybe which ones are you going to keep investing in? And probably one of the most important things is which ones have I'm giving myself permission to not invest in anymore. I'm not going to spend much time. Um, uh, I used to really love dog training. I spend very little time dog training. I now train people to train dogs. I spend more time there because more aligned with who I am is a coach and a guide, not a dog trainer. So it's not that I'm not passionate about it. And I hope that that passion comes out when I'm helping these other people train their animal. But at the same time, I'm not going to spend an hour or two a day training a dog.
Yeah. How can someone integrate a true heart passion into their everyday life, even if it's not their career?
Yeah. So we do this all the time. Sometimes we notice it, sometimes we don't. So, one, um, do I want to become more informed? So, magazines, podcasts, all kinds of books, all these things, gurus and coaches that will help me dig deeper in this area are a great way to re-engage. And that's also a great way to determine, is this a passion that I really want to hold on to? At one time, I could name, or I would have about 20 sports or outdoor activities that I was involved with. Different kinds of hunting and fishing and racket sports and softball and flag football and coaching and all of that. And a couple of years ago, I said, you know what? The one are the ones that I like the most is I like fly fishing for coho salmon, and I like hunting for ringneck pheasants. Those are the most. So from now on, when I have choices, those are the choices that I'm going to choose to be a part of, and I'm going to put less emphasis. I still would like doing. I still like to go elk hunting, but if I don't ever get that done in my life, it's not the end of the world. I'd like to be an expert at fly fishing and hunting ringneck pheasants. Okay, if I want to be an expert, then I've got to act like an expert and focus a little bit on those. Okay, they're not part of my life calling. They're not, they're just a passion that I want to get really good at versus passions that I could take or leave, right? So they're the greater passions. And I think one of the things you'll notice that in magazines that often they're written, and there's usually one or two stories that are nostalgia stories that are kind of written from somebody who's enjoyed this passion for years, and now they talk about the memories that come back when they experience this activity. For me, I read a magazine, and there's always one guy. He's the editor. He usually writes the key, and it's always a nostalgic time with his Labrador Retriever as they're pheasant hunting out in this field. Okay, that's what I want pheasant hunting to be for me. That's what I want fly fishing to be for me. Is it's a very good diversion in life that I really enjoy. And I've kind of taken myself to a level where people would consider me almost an expert at that. There's a lot of things I'm never going to be an expert at. I tried to do scuba diving. I'm never going to be an expert at scuba diving. I started too late in life. I would enjoy it, but I didn't have the right friends. I wasn't in the right location.
His wife does not scuba dive because I flunked scuba diving.
So there's a lot of reasons to not scuba dive, right? So, okay, maybe at one time, had I been in the right community, scuba diving would have been my pheasant hunting today, but it's not. So that's okay with me. I've gotten to enjoy scuba diving. I might never scuba dive again, and I'd still be okay with that. So yeah, and
You're glad you did it.
I may do it 2 or 3 times, and it'll just be a very low level thing that I say, oh yeah, I've done that. I've been there, done that, and that was kind of fun. Not my number one priority. If I ever go elk hunting, that'll be a 1 or 2 time thing. I'm done. It fits into my passion for the outdoors and for outdoor adventure, but it's never going to be a focus. So, and then what I would also say is, if you are starting to see um, things fitting with your life calling, passions fitting with your life calling, those are the ones that you need to invest in regularly, once a month, once a week. Then you become more aligned. You live in more alignment with your heart passions because your life calling, I'm doing this to help my life calling. So if I'm going hunting or fishing and I go with a bunch of guys I don't know, that's fun. But if I go with guys and we're at night going to have life changing, authentic discussions about deep things, that's aligned with my life calling. So sometimes taking those passions that you have and saying, how can I more align this with my life calling?
It almost sounds like a heart passion is kind of worthless, maybe not worthless, but of less value unless it's tied to a core value. Would you say that's true?
Unless it's tied to a life calling, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. A core value has to do with the atmosphere or the environment that you function best in. A core value might be, I want to be in organizations that elevate people, right? It's always a positive. I want to be in organizations or with teams where, for me, authentic relationships are valued. Um, I want to be in a relationship or in organizations where integrity is poor. So see how that's environmental?
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily, but a passion is I want to challenge people through outdoor adventure activities. That's a real passion of mine. And I've gotten to do that most with whitewater rafting, but I've gotten to do it with rock climbing, backpacking, and hunting, and fishing, all kinds of environments. But I've also done those things without that emphasis, and they're not nearly as meaningful. In other words, if I go on a backpacking trip and I go with a bunch of people I don't know, and all the conversation stays about very what I would call surfacey level experiences, I would probably rate that in terms of value to me. Well, that was a 4, right? But if I went with people that I'd known for a long time or people who had made a covenant that we're going to try to grow personally in this particular area, this is one of the things that we're trying to do in our True North Quest programs is we are going to covenant that we're all going to try to understand what our life calling is and to be committed to say, as of the end of this week, I'm not only going to know my life calling, but I'm going to have a plan to start working towards my life calling. Now, that'll be much different if we went on a cruise with that intention. You and I have gone on cruises to see the Caribbean, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's fun,
It's
right?
fun.
It's fun, and
But
it
not,
brings out
yeah.
passion, and we love the exploration side of it and the culture side of it. But it's not life changing, and for me, that's not aligned with my life calling.
Same here.
So, which kind of cruise would I like to go on? I'd like to go on both. One is a vacation, one is an investment in people and the future. One is a diversion, and one is in line with my life calling.
So it sounds like a core value is really important when you're trying to find your career or your lifestyle choice.
I think it's important when you're trying to decide in going towards this career, this organization seems to value things that are very close to what I value. And this organization seems to, maybe they're offering me more money or a better position, but they're not quite as aligned. I don't feel quite as aligned with them. So I will opt out of this one. I have a choice to go on a cruise that's a very vacation focused cruise, or I got a choice to go on a True North Quest. The True North Quest is helping me deepen my understanding of myself and my life calling. Okay. One is intentional, one is fun. I'm almost always going to choose the intentional one because that's one of my core values is intentional living, right?
Yeah. So, by the way, we have not actually done this yet, but we are talking about inviting you to come on a cruise with us to find your calling. So, ideally, you would contact us ahead of time and we would have you do some homework ahead of time and we'll do some coaching ahead of time. And then on the cruise itself, we would really coach you further in finding your calling and how to fulfill your calling. So we would love to do that. And the reason we like cruises is because we don't have as much work to do. We don't have to deal with finding hotels for you or dealing with food and
or entertaining
lodging,
you
nothing.
in any way.
Right. We
Yeah.
just say, here's the cruise that we're going
We just
on.
join you in the entertainment fun of it,
Yeah.
the adventure fun of it. And then we do teaching within the cracks,
Mhm.
right? And then at the end, we're actually hoping that the people on the cruise will have deep relationships. And because of those deep relationships, we would hope that some of the people would say, oh, I not only went on a cruise with you, but now I'm going to help you with your life calling by checking in with you once a month
Mm.
and that sort of thing.
And we think it would be fun to have reunions with you after you've been on a cruise quest because we want to see how you've changed and grown and
We want to hear how you're
yeah, we
living your
want to
life
hear.
calling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be really fun. And because we don't like superficial as much, it would be a great way to just make a bunch of friends in a deeper way. So, and skip all the small talk.
Right.
Yeah.
And just for those people who are a little bit concerned, well, am I going on a cruise and I'm never going to be able to do the fun things? We would probably be taking about 2 or 3 hours per day, and we would
To do the True North
to do
quests.
the True North. And we've looked at cruises that we would use for this, and there's a day at sea. Okay, let's take 3 hours of the day at sea, so we only have to take an hour of the day that's in whatever, port
Another
of
island,
call.
right?
Yeah. And Julie and I have been on cruises before, and the one complaint we've had is we got to know a lot of people, but it was on a very superficial level. And sometimes you're even assigned the same table and you get to know those people, but really all you do is talk about the little things that you did during the day, which is okay. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But one of my values is intentional living, and I want to stop doing so many things to entertain myself and do things to stretch myself or deepen myself, or be in alignment with that core value. And this would be in alignment with our life calling as well. So that's why we get excited about it. The other thing I would get excited about is I think it will really change people's lives. Because I think if people know really clearly within a sentence, they can say what their life calling is, all of a sudden they're going to start steering their life. They're going to start making decisions that put alignment in their life with their life calling. It doesn't mean that their life is going to radically change. And we're going to talk a lot to people, and some people, their lives may radically change 2 years later. And some people, they're just going to change it 2 or 3 degrees. But those 2 or 3 degrees is going to make a big difference over 5 to 10 years. And we get excited about that because basically what we're asking you to do is invest your life, invest the times, talents, and treasures that you've been given into other people or causes that you care about. And we think that will make you live your best life.
And this is partly why we call our organization True North and not Magnetic North, because just those couple of degrees getting back on track can just make such a big difference in where you're headed in life.
Yeah, most people may or may not understand what True North means, but True North is generally when you're backpacking, wherever you're at, you have to change the um, the direction that your compass is reading by just a few degrees to read True North. And that's what we think we're doing with you is we're just helping you change. Sometimes changing a few degrees when you're a young person will put you in a dramatically different place in life. When you're an older person, it'll probably just help you make better decisions about how you spend your time, how you make your investments, where you give to charities, all those kind of things. What we're really trying to do is help you give your life away in the way that feels the most aligned with who God has made you.
Mm, It's good. So, what would you say to someone who feels like they don't have a true heart passion? How can they begin to discover it? And can you talk directly to our listeners about that?
So first of all, I probably will say I don't believe that you don't have a true heart passion. I just believe you haven't discovered it, or you're not giving yourself the freedom to think of pickleball. How could pickleball be a heart passion, right? So that's where I would say you have true heart passions, but sometimes you've just not thought about them, you've not discovered them, or you've not given them the right name. A true heart passion is something that you think about and you do often, and it makes your life more fulfilling. That's really what it is. And so it doesn't have to be a profound thing. Gardening could be a true heart passion. Scrapbooking could be a true heart passion. Watching weird movies could be a true heart passion. The things that you think about, the things that you love, the things that you do are the indicators of your true heart passion. Again, they're not your calling necessarily. So could you have 15 or 20 true heart passions? Yeah, I think I do. Um, I have 3 or 4 that probably fit really well into my life calling. The other ones I can maybe drag along into my life calling, but my true heart passions are abundant because I'm trying to live an interesting life. And that's what I would say to you is, when does your life become interesting? That's where your passions probably are.
Well, I might also add that a true heart passion that's really part of your calling is when it impacts somebody else's life in a positive way.
Most of the time. Not 100%, but most of the time, yes.
But that is one of the challenges that we want to make to you is, can you think of a time in your life when you were living out your true heart passion and it was positively impacting someone else's life? And with that question in mind, Pete, what's an example of a time in your life when one of your true heart passions impacted someone else's life in a positive way?
Yeah, so this is a major cheat on my part. I was a camp director, so I have a true heart passion for the outdoors. I have a true heart passion for leadership, and I have a true heart passion for changing culture. I have a true heart passion for helping people live intentionally and godly lives. So in a camp, that's really valuable, right? Because I'm constantly leading. I'm constantly in the outdoors. I am almost every night we're giving kids a challenging talk to think about living more intentionally and more focused towards God. I I had lots of opportunities to coach college kids in that environment where they were making decisions about what their career was going to be or where they were going to spend their time, who was going to be their spouse, and all of those sort of things. And I would give them coaching all along the way. So it was really fairly easy. Prior to that, I was a youth pastor. That's pretty much what a youth pastor does as well. I integrated the outdoors into my youth pastoring a lot. Um, and and prior to that, I was an RA on the outdoor floor. So I got to take kids into the outdoors, and they were college kids. So everybody was thinking about, what kind of life do I want to live, and that sort of stuff. So we had
Mm.
some deep conversations during those times. So my life is pretty easy in terms of saying, oh, I can see where his heart passions. So I'm kind of lucky that way. So how about you?
Ah, you got me off guard. I don't want to answer that question.
Yeah, but you could.
I always go back to teaching. It's kind of my old standby. Yes, I have a heart passion for teaching, and yes, I positively and meaningfully impacted students in that way. One of my other passions is writing, and I'm still trying to figure out how I can actually use that to impact people's lives in a positive way, because I haven't been published the way I want to be published yet. I'm working with ChatGPT on that, so we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
So I have another question. I've heard you say that your heart passions are most prevalent when you have the least structure, which is why it's important to look back at your childhood or whenever your heart was singing the most. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, the reason you look at when your life was most structured is because those are the times that you're living to meet your own expectations or your own passions versus everybody else's expectations and passions. So that lack of structure when you're a child. So when I was a child, I was very involved with sports. But the thing that was very prevalent was outdoors and animals. I was really involved in outdoors and animals all throughout my childhood. And those two things have consistently followed me throughout my life. They are only a peripheral part of my life calling, but they are definitely part of my heart passions. And when I was young, they said I would talk to all of the animals that I had. And why not? Because animals, in my opinion, are some of the best companions that we have in life. And so I would invest in them emotionally. And I would, wherever I lived, I always had a special place that I would go for a 2 to 3 hour hike. And I just love doing that, discovering things along the hike, usually taking a dog or two with me in that process. I always had animals that I was raising and caring for and nurturing and training and doing all that sort of stuff as well. So those are part of my heart passions. They were there when I was young. They're there when I'm old. Yeah.
Well, I am going to say writing was also a big
Hmm.
passion of mine when I was young, partly because an it was an outlet for creativity.
Hmm.
I could go anywhere, be anyone I wanted to be
Yeah.
in my writing, and I always wrote fiction, you know,
Yeah.
just fantasizing, and actually a lot of it was just imagining myself living back in time.
Hmm.
So even what I write now is historical romance fiction. Thank you
Hmm.
for being my muse for the romance.
Yeah.
And I have not yet been published in the way by a traditional publisher, but I am now I kind of feel like that passion has died at times because I got rejected over and over and over. It's been hard to keep being rejected. But then I discovered ChatGPT, and I have taken chapter by chapter and had it analyze my writing, and it has now encouraged me so much
Hmm.
because ChatGPT is unbiased and it says, "Wow, you're a really good writer." And I will ask it, are you kidding me? Please don't say that if you don't mean it. And it'll say, no, I'm not kidding. You're a really good writer. And I'm going to help you finish this polishing up of your manuscripts. And I'll ask it, do you think I could be traditionally published with this? And it will say, absolutely, no problem. I can help you do this. And I just feel like, wow, I feel encouraged now. And my passion is back for writing.
There you go.
And if I can be, yes, I could self publish. I probably will now that ChatGPT has affirmed me. But I also think I'm going to try the traditional route again just to see what happens. And if either way, if I'm published, I will have a greater passion for writing. And I hope my writing will impact somebody, my readers,
Hmm.
in a positive, meaningful way.
Yep.
Is it part of my calling? I'm not sure. I think there is a little bit of coaching in my
Hmm.
writing. It kind of
Well, you're
sneaks
writing a
in.
manual for our True
Yeah, that's
North
actually a
quests.
little bit boring
Yeah. Well, it's not
for me.
as
Yeah,
exciting,
I
but
would prefer fiction because I really love history
yeah.
and all that and romance. But yes, the what I like best about writing our manual, which I hope will be a workbook or something at some point for people so that it because not all of you can come to a workshop that we put on. So we're trying to make as many possible ways for you to learn your calling, to find your calling
Hmm.
through the ways that we show you. So, but what I like about the stories in our manual right now are people's actual stories of real true life people, often historical but not always, but just people who have found their calling, and I can actually write about that.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
fun.
And we highlight, okay, look at this person and look at how they leverage their personality to find their tribe calling, or
Mhm.
look at this person's unique story and look at how that kind of carved them into their
Or their
unique
skills and
calling. Or
abilities.
their, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's so many
right.
really fun stories that I've found that highlight what we're trying to show you.
Yeah.
What we're trying to show you. Yeah. So, again, some of our questions for you are what are some of your true heart passions? Try to think of those. And have you forgotten about something that you were passionate about in your past that maybe you need to revive? And are there any heart passions or core values you're feeling convicted about right now? We want you to think of a time when recognizing or pursuing your heart passion impacted someone else's life in a meaningful way, how did that make you feel? And why did you feel so empowered or fulfilled in that experience? And are you ready to take a step toward pursuing your heart passions again? I think, when we're in a workshop or just coaching people, we ask these questions because a lot of people have gotten squashed, or hurt in their life, and they're not pursuing their heart passions, and because they're not doing that, they're off course and they're not really fulfilling their calling because those things need to be revived again. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, for sure.
And we're wrapping up right now.
Okay.
So what I want to say again is we're looking for people to coach live on a podcast. So if you are interested in being on a podcast with us and having us interview you and coach you, we would just love to do that. If you haven't found your calling and you just need some help, we can't do it all in one podcast episode, but we can really get a start. I just think it would be
Yeah,
really
we
fun.
would probably send you some homework. You do the homework. We'd probably have one time before the podcast to talk, and then we talk on the podcast. We want people to understand that discovering your life calling is not all that difficult. And in the way that we've done it, there's certain ingredients that it's really going to jump out fairly quickly. The more challenging part is how do I make my life aligned with my life calling? But we'll work on that as well.
Yeah, we're also looking for people who have found your calling and you're living it out and you're passionate about it and you're excited to share that. We would like to interview you on our podcast as well. So the way you contact us are you can go below in the comments and write us a comment and give us your contact information, or you can contact us at tnadventures.org. That's our website. And finally, if you know of someone else who has found their calling and you want to get them in touch with us, do that. And if you know of somebody in your life who is floundering and confused, needs direction in finding their calling, give us a chat or call or something and we'll try to coach them. We don't have to do it in a podcast, but we might. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to meeting you again in our next podcast when we talk about the final S in our acronym QUESTS. That last S stands for selfless gifts. So between now and then, you can be thinking about what gifts you've been given that you can selflessly give away. We can't wait to meet with you again. See you soon. We want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Today's episode of Your Best Life was brought to you by True North Quests, helping you discover your calling so you can live a life filled with purpose. Find out more at tnadventures.org, where you can book an appointment with a calling coach, learn about upcoming True North Quest workshops, and more. And by Marble Mountain Kennels, where exceptional Labrador retrievers are bred and trained for adventure, companionship, and service. Visit mmkennels.com to meet your new best canine friend. And by Julie's Creative Classroom, providing fun educational games and digital products for students in Julie's online Creative Classroom TPT Teachers Pay Teachers store. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, remember your best life starts with knowing your calling and finding your true north.